Welcome, everyone. Just another quick reminder, we will be recording today's session. So if you do not want to be recorded, you can disable your video connection to Zoom. Good morning, it is morning here. I'm Michael Ward. I'm in Everett, Washington today, just north of Seattle. My co-organizer and co-founder of these sessions with Barry Strugatz, Redmond Entwistle, is in London. Good afternoon, Redmond. We'd like to welcome you all. Thank you for coming today and joining other students practicing Tai Chi in the lineage of Professor Cheng-Man Cheng. These sessions began as a way to stay connected during a time of social isolation and have since evolved into a forum for sharing our Tai Chi practice in a spirit of fellowship and scholarship. We meet here every Wednesday at the same time. Please feel free to share the connection details with any of your students, classmates, or teachers. All are welcome. If you're not getting the newsletter, we send that out every week, and it's in a new newsletter format through MailChimp. If you're not getting it, you might try registering or subscribing to it as a means of facilitating your connection to it. If you're getting it without doing that, then that's fine. Just a quick reminder to everyone that we are going to be continuing to use the raise hand icon and or messages in chat. So once we get to the question phase of today's presentation, please use the hand icon or chat, and we'll alternate between the two to feed questions in. Another quick reminder, Daniel Altschuler is doing the part 2 of the Chinese medicine for the curious and inspired. And you still have time to join that if you would like to. You do not have to have taken part 1 in order to sign up for part 2. The recordings of part 1 are available. You can review those on your own and then just join in with part 2. So if you're interested, you're welcome to join Daniel in that. Next week, we have not determined a topic yet, so I can't tell you what we're going to talk about next week, but we have a couple things we're kicking around. Today, we're going to be talking with Judyth Weaver. She's going to be speaking about her life in Tai Chi and links to other areas of expertise in both dance and movement therapy. Judyth was a student at Zhejiang in New York and founder of the Tai Chi program at Naropa Institute. She was also a pioneering movement therapist and was also a modern and classical Japanese dancer. One other reminder is that in 2 weeks, we're going to do part 2 of the tribute to Ben Lo, because so many people had wanted to speak about how Ben influenced their lives and their Tai Chi practice. We're unable to get everybody on due to the time limitation the first time we did it. So again, in 2 weeks, we're going to host another session with the focus on Ben, and that'll be March 31st. So if you can just mark that in your calendar, and if you have something to say, we'd like to try and get everybody in that day.
Sorry, wait, 2 weeks is not March 31st.
2 weeks is not March 31st. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
It will be in 2 weeks and it won't be on March 31st.
Okay, thank you.
Today, we will be following a video of Professor Cheng-Man Cheng doing the first third of the form. And today we're going to just do that 3 times. So we won't have a guest leader today. So we'll do a third pass with Professor Cheng's video. The video was shot by Ken Van Sickle. We thank him for letting us use that. And then after that, we'll go to Judyth. So if you want to go ahead and get in position now, we'll begin the Tai Chi.
Preparation. Beginning. Raise hands. ward off left, ward off right, roll back, press, push, single whip, lift hands, strike with shoulder, white crane spreads wings, brush left knee, play guitar, brush left knee, step forwards, block, parry, punch, withdraw, push, cross hands. And back to the beginning. Preparation. Raise hands. Ward off left. Ward off right. Roll back. Press. Push. Single whip. Lift hands. Strike with shoulder. White crane spreads wings. Brush left knee. Play guitar. Brush left knee. Step forwards. Block. Parry. Punch. Withdraw. Push. Cross hands. Okay, and one more time. Heels together. Preparation. Raise hands. Ward off left. Ward of right. Roll back. Press. Push. Single whip. Lift hands. Strike with shoulder. White crane spreads wings. Brush left knee. Play guitar. Brush left knee. Step forwards, block, parry, punch, withdraw, push, cross hands.
Great. We'll go now to Judyth Weaver. Again, Judyth was a student at Shizhong, founder of the Tai Chi program at Naropa, and a pioneering movement therapist, modern dancer, and classical Japanese dancer. To you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Michael and Redmond. I must admit that I was very surprised when you asked me to do this, to talk about myself, but it has certainly been an amazing journey into the past and even at photographs that I haven't seen for years. Can you hear me all right? Yeah,
Yeah,
this is
you're
okay?
doing fine.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I had always, all my life, wanted to be a dancer. I needed to move. And while I was trying to dance when I was about 14, I injured my knee very badly. I don't know what it was, but I couldn't bend my left knee for at least a year before the pain started going away. But that didn't stop me. In 1957, I was 17 years old and I went to New York City to become a dancer. And I worked as a secretary and as a model for many artists. And I studied Taoism at the New School for Social Research. And I really, really, really wanted to study Tai Chi. I'm not so sure I knew what it was, but it attracted me. And of course, I was so interested in Taoism and everything. And I went to several different classes of Tai Chi teachers. The only one I remember was Sophia Delza, who was, I think, the first person who started teaching Caucasians. But every class, and I remember hers very much, it just didn't seem right. It seemed like there was too much attention to the hands. I didn't really know what Tai Chi was, but it didn't seem like that was what I was after. So I never found a teacher. In 1960, I went to San Francisco, sort of on my way to Asia, but I was in an accident where I broke my back, and I was told that I would never, never dance again. And I went back to New York in 61, and I studied at the American Buddhist Academy. I studied Japanese language. China was closed to Americans at that time. And I studied calligraphy with the priest there. And just like at the sessions we had recently about calligraphy, my class also was a lot of times rubbing the ink and using newspaper and making the marks on the newspaper. And we were first taught numbers. So we were taught 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and heart. And we were never taught how to do 4. To this day, my 4 in Asian letters isn't very good. And when I finally asked, I don't know if it was the same in the calligraphy classes with professor, but when I finally asked, why don't we do 4? I was told that the pronunciation of the number 4 and the pronunciation for death in Japanese is the same. So the Buddhist priest never taught that. I also found Japanese classical dance, which is called buyo. I know we all call it, when we talk about Maggie's classes, kabuki dancing. But kabuki is really, it is the whole, it's like what, Broadway musical theater. There's acting, there's talking, and there are excerpts of dancing in it. Only men are allowed to do kabuki, even though it was a woman who went around the countryside and danced. So she opened up the idea, the thought of dance culture, but only men are allowed to do kabuki, except the dance segments are taken out and they're called buyo. So this is Japanese classical dance, and women are allowed to do that. We have dance classes, and that's what we were learning, buyo. And in this buyo class, Japanese classical dance, I met Maggie Newman. And it was really amazing because Maggie and I had both been modern dancers. Maggie was an extraordinary, amazing modern dancer. I looked all over for the picture of her on the cover of Dance Magazine. I mean, it was like, she wasn't touching anything, no floor, no anything. She was just flying through the air, but I couldn't find it. I'd like to see that again. So modern dance, buyo. And one day the Japanese dance class we had a practice session at Maggie's studio. And I saw a chart of, I think she had taken the pictures of professor and put it up on a chart so she could follow it. And I looked at it and I said, I've been looking for a Tai Chi teacher. I'd really like to study Tai Chi. And Maggie didn't say anything. And I got the feeling that she figured, modern dance, Japanese dance, enough. We don't have to, she doesn't have to follow me into Tai Chi either. And when I thought about it and in preparing for this, I thought, if Maggie had introduced me to Professor Chung and I started studying Tai Chi, I very probably would never have gone to Japan to live and study there. So that was that. I had no intro to Professor Chang, but at one point I was in the Boston Museum and I saw a scroll, a beautiful Japanese scroll, and it is of 2 young women, and their job is to draw water. There's the scroll, to draw water from the sea. This is on the inland sea, and the water evaporates, so they were salt pullers. I saw this scroll and I thought, I want to choreograph a modern dance. And when this is maybe hard to see, so there's another photo of a woodblock print of the same story. It turns out that not only is this a true story, but it's a very famous story in Japanese culture, and many dances and plays about it. It's called, well, Matsukaze is one of the sisters' names. So I wanted to choreograph a modern dance of this, but more than that, I wanted to study more and I wanted to go to Japan. So I told my buyo teacher in New York that I wanted to go to Japan and study. And she said, oh, I'll give you a letter to my teacher. And I thought, okay. I had no idea. And maybe some of you have an idea of how important that a letter, the introduction is in Japanese and maybe Chinese culture too. So I went to Japan with this letter and go to the classes of this Buyo teacher. And I had no idea, but he was the emperor of all Japanese classical dance. He was the top person of all the schools. And in his classes were kabuki stars, movie stars, top geisha. And there's a picture of him and me and, after one practice class one day. It was just an amazing experience for me to be able to connect as much as I could without having the language very well, but dancing with these people. There we are again in this country. You would learn a dance and then you would go back and learn it better or perfect it or something. In Japan, they don't do it that way. I was taught one dance and then I wanted to go back and learn it better. I was taught another dance and then I was taught another dance, and they figure eventually maybe you'll catch on. And if not this lifetime, maybe next lifetime. That was sort of the philosophy. So I learned a lot of dances. One of them was about Matsukaze. And one day they asked me to try to do the lion dance, shishi dance. And they gave me the wig, which was very, very heavy. And there I am. And then in the lion dance, you really throw your head around. And I remember actually my dantian, which I didn't know about very much, was painful the next day. So I was doing Japanese Buyo classes every day and studying other Japanese culture, tea ceremony, everything that moved. And I went and saw a No play and I was stunned. I thought, oh my gosh, I am studying the wrong form. Like I said, kabuki is more like a musical theater, whereas the No drama is more like, it's older than kabuki. It's more like classical Greek drama, very, very sparse, very, very elegant and intricate and very, very difficult. And there I am on a traditional No stage, which is usually in a shrine in Japan. And I am actually, this is, again, women are not allowed to do No plays. Out of the No dramas are excerpts, dance excerpts, which women are allowed to do. That's called oshimai. And there I am. This is actually Matsukaze. And I got to perform it at the recital. And my favorite posture and movement is that right there. This is Matsukaze crying. This is the movement of crying, very stylized, very simple. And since I had that letter of connection with the kabuki master, with the Buyo master, and it went all the way back to my teacher in New York, of course, I couldn't quit Buyo classes. So I just added Oshimai classes. So I was doing both of them. And I was also studying, sitting with Zen meditation with Omori Sogen, who was a kendo, the highest kendo master in the world, actually. And when I told him I wanted to go to a monastery, he said, oh, I'll give you a letter to my friend down in Kobe at Shofukuji. And I thought, I knew about letters by that time. I thought, okay. And I brought this letter down to Kobe, and it really, you might say, changed my life. When I got there, the head of the monastery, Yamada Mumon Roshi, I didn't know, but when I returned to the US and read about him in books, he was considered the top Zen master of the 20th century. He was not there for a week. And if I hadn't had that letter, the monks would have just thrown me in the ditch and shut the door. But because I had this letter, they couldn't do that. They had to let me stay. And so I stayed. And when the Yamada Mumon Roshi returned and I had my first interview with him, he asked me what I did in the United States. And I said, well, I had been a dancer. And he looked at me and he smiled and he said, now you will learn the highest form of dance, movementless dance. And I did. And I was there in the monastery for a year and a half. It was very unusual. There were 30 monks, males, and this Mumon Roshi was so enlightened that he really didn't discriminate, and he allowed me to stay and study with the monks. As you can imagine, between modern dance and then Japanese classical dance, and then sitting in the monastery for a year and a half, my knees were really, really painful and a mess. In fact, I even had steroid shots in when I was in Japan. They didn't help, but that was that. And then when Yamada Mumon was leading a pilgrimage through Southeast Asia, I asked to go with them, and I was lucky enough and honored enough to be able to go through Southeast Asia, and that's how I got back to New York in 1968. Yeah, that's just a quick photo of me sitting underneath the revered Bodhi tree, which is a descendant of the tree that Buddha sat under. So in 1960, and that is a picture of my revered Zen master, Yamada Mumon Roshi. So in 1968, I returned to New York and I went to Buyo class, and Maggie looked at me and she said, well, I guess it's time for you to meet Professor Chung. And she brought me to 211 Canal Street, where I remember pulling myself up the stairs, hand over hand, because my knees were not working very well. And I had my first appointment with Professor, which was an extraordinary experience for me. I remember the touch of Professor when he touched my wrist. Well, that's a bit early, but anyway, when he touched my wrist, his touch was so light, and yet I could feel it deep inside me. It was the most amazing touch I had ever experienced. And Professor said, oh yes, your blood is bad, your stomach is bad. I never mentioned anything except my knees. He mentioned my back, which I had, broken in the accident in San Francisco. He said, you will have bone tuberculosis. Ed Young was the translator. And I think bone tuberculosis translates into something like arthritis. You'll have bone tuberculosis if you don't do Tai Chi. I already had arthritis. And he said, and your period is coming in 2 days. And I said, no, my period isn't scheduled for a week. Well, he gave me medicine. I had it filled. And you can believe that my period came in 2 days. The medicine was amazing. It made me sick before I even drank it. As I was cooking the medicine, I got nauseous. I would belch. I actually had to lie down while the medicine was cooking, let alone drinking it. That was a whole nother experience. And I went regularly to Shujung to be seen by professor. And then I would stay until the school closed down, just watching the classes. Most of them were sword classes on those days I was there, but it was a wonderful experience for me, even just to be there. And when I told professor that I couldn't stay in New York anymore, I wanted to go back to San Francisco, professor said, okay, go find Patrick Watson and have him teach you Tai Chi. So back in San Francisco, I went to the YMCA where Patrick was a lifeguard. And I walked into the pool, chlorine and everything. And I found Patrick Watson and I said, Professor Chang told me that you should teach me Tai Chi. And Patrick said, okay, find me a lot of students and I'll do a class. And I was living at Zen Center at that time. So there were many, many students that I brought and organized several classes for Patrick. And eventually I was working at Esalen in San Francisco as a secretary, but eventually I met and married the director of Esalen down in Big Sur. And I really wanted him and everyone else. I wanted everyone to learn Tai Chi, or everyone who wanted to learn Tai Chi. So I brought Patrick down to Esalen. I think he came once a month and gave Tai Chi classes to people at Esalen. And that's how Patrick met Erika. This was the early 70s, and the first group who went to meet Oscar Ichazo in Chile had just come back, and there was a lot of excitement about that. And that's how Patrick connected with Erika. And over the many years, in 1973 or 74, Patrick wanted to go to New York. And by that time, he asked me to teach his classes in San Francisco. And it was on a Saturday in 1974, that I was teaching a class in San Francisco. And Margaret Matsumoto is probably on this call. She was in that class. And that was the day that Abraham Liu and Ben Lo walked in to the facility. And I talked about that in the tribute, the memorial to Ben Lo. But that's how I met Ben and asked him for a private lesson and became his first student in the United States. And at the same time that I started learning Tai Chi, I also started learning or studying another practice. It's called sensory awareness. I don't know if any of you know of the term. Charlotte Selber is the one who popularized it in the United States, and Elsa Gindler is the person who in Germany who really, she didn't use that term, but she started that practice of really helping people tune into themselves, really come to being more real. And I studied that from 1968 all the way through. And for me, my two main practices were Tai Chi Chuan, and sensory awareness, and they were not so different. The difference was that the Tai Chi had a form and sensory awareness was formless. But the awareness that it brought and the connection with oneself was the same. And as when I taught, for me, it was very, very important to teach in that manner, to have that essence of being as fully as possible and allowing also. And so I was living in San Francisco, teaching in San Francisco, and I would go back to Shizhung whenever I could. And those are now Redmond, you can put on those photos. There are some, the ones from New York. Early morning practice, some of you may remember in Riverside Park. There's Natasha and Ed, 7:30, I think in the morning it was, in Riverside Park. And Carol Yamazaki, you can see, is there also. And Natasha tells me that the man in the back was called maybe Lloyd Lynn, and he made violin bows. Did you say that, Natasha? Anyway, those were wonderful, wonderful times, albeit very early in the morning.
Lord Liu.
Lloyd Liu. Aha.
Liu, yeah, Liu.
Okay, great. Okay. And in the 1970s, I also studied Reichian therapy. If anyone knows the name of Wilhelm Reich, and his work is the basis of all somatic psychology, psychotherapy that's happening in the world today. And interestingly enough, the work of Elsa Gindler, the person I mentioned who was in Germany, influenced his work a lot. So Reich brought the essence of energy, of movement, of breath, of muscular armor into psychoanalysis where it really wasn't there before. And I worked with, I was certified in it, and I worked with clients. And it was very interesting to me, the hand massage that we do, where the stroke goes out from the thumb, the index finger and the middle finger, and then in the ring finger and the little finger. Well, in Reichian therapy, I was always very impressed with the fact when people often got a charge and could feel the energy flowing through them, often it was just those two little fingers that were tingling or they were energized. Sometimes it was the three big ones, but it was more often the little finger and the ring finger. And I thought, well, there is knowledge of the energy movement, of course, that the ancients in China knew, and this was coming through in the more modern movement therapies, somatic therapies of the new world. I eventually got a PhD and wrote my dissertation, which was called Ways of Balance East and West, Taiji Chuan and Reichian Therapy. And I could relate them quite a lot. I found, as I was looking through photos in preparation for this talk, I found some notes on a torn piece of envelope where the date was 1978. And what I had written, and was probably in my dissertation, says, Taiji Chuan is what Reichian therapy is all about. The theories of yin and yang, which could be likened to sympathetic, which is yang, and parasympathetic, which is yin, of the autonomic nervous system. Working for the balance of the two systems in somatic psychology, we want to be able to go from parasympathetic to sympathetic as we need. And in Taiji, the movements alternate yin and yang. And we practice that ability of moving from one to the other. So for me, there was a great connection in all the pieces of work that I did. And eventually I went even further back and studied pre and perinatal therapy and became a teacher in that as well, where I work with mothers and babies. And I work with, in preparation, even in preparation for conception, centering, relaxing, focus on the Dantian. And this is a picture of a little baby who had a difficult birth, but having worked with him, he's just gone through a tunnel, which might be like the birth canal, but this time he did it his way. And I don't know if you can see, but he he was so proud. He was so pleased that babies and adults, there are many ways that we can work to help relieve our traumas, and certainly just learning some of the movements. I worked with pregnant women, even just the first section, or how do you really relate to your dantian or to your stomach that is getting bigger. Okay. And in 1974, I got a letter from Trungpa Rinpoche's people telling me that they were going to do a summer institute and asking me, they said that I had done some meditation retreats with Trungpa Rinpoche before, and they said that he just wanted my energy there and I could teach anything I wanted. So I was really honored. And I thought a lot about the various things I wanted to teach. And I decided my passion was to really connect Tai Chi with so many people. So I decided that that is what I wanted to teach there at Naropa. And I called Shijung and told them what was happening, the summer institute to be, and would it be all right if I teach Tai Chi there. And it was Lou Kleinsmith who answered the phone, and he said, we'll have a meeting, we'll discuss it, and we'll get back to you. And they got back to me and said, you can teach the first section. And I was thrilled. To me, the first section is an utter jewel. And if I could teach nothing but the first section for my entire life, I'd really, really be honored and happy. The Naropa people said, well, okay, if we don't have enough students, we're not going to send you a ticket to come to Boulder for the summer. And I don't remember whether he said 20 students or 50 students. And I thought, oh my gosh, how will that many people want to do Tai Chi? So 2 weeks later from that call, I got a call from Naropa and it said, we have 150 people registered. And I went, eek. So I called Shijung, and Luke answered. He always answered the phone when I called. And I said, would you like to send another person from Shijung to help me teach the classes? There are going to be 150 people. And Lou said, no, just continue, do it your own way. And I got the feeling the message was, hey, Cookie, you started this, you stay with it. We're not going to do anything about it. So there I was, going alone to Naropa to teach Tai Chi. And it ended up that there were 500 people registered that first summer. It was amazing. All those other classes that I wanted to take, I couldn't. I started teaching at 9 o'clock in the morning and I taught all day long, every day. And it was an amazing, amazing experience and time. That first summer at Naropa was called the spiritual Woodstock. I mean, Ram Dass was there giving talks, as well as Trungpa. Allen Ginsberg was there. Gregory Bateson was there. The Vipassana teachers had just come from India, Jack Kornfeld and Joseph Goldstein. In fact, Joseph was in my Tai Chi class. He learned the first section that summer. And so there was, I think, Redmond, you put the write-up. That was the first announcement. So when I taught Tai Chi, I always wanted it to be Tai Chi Chuan as a way of life, not just this is an exercise that maybe you'll do in the morning and evening, but how it fits into your life. And I wrote on this because I wanted to acknowledge Shijung and in the write-up, but they didn't do that. So I corrected it for myself. And that was the intro, the write-up for the first year of Naropa Institute. I always felt that it was really good to have students to learn the first section and then learn the first section again, before they go on to do the second. And even in my own private practicing, when that happened, I felt that the people really could get deeper sooner in a way with the more simple. I remember I was given the colored film of Professor Cheng. It was, you know, 16 millimeter. I still have it. It's very, very heavy. I rented a projector and wanted to show it to the students. And I was showing the film one day at Naropa, and Trungpa Rinpoche walked into the auditorium. He was going through it, but he walked in and he just stood there and watched the film of Professor doing the form for a long time. And then he walked on through to his meeting. But later, when I had some private time with him, I said, hey, Rinpoche, what did you think of that film? And he said, it made me feel very homesick. And I said, no, it wasn't filmed in China, Rinpoche. This was New York City. And Trungpa said, no, it wasn't the place. It was the feeling I got from the movement. And I have the sense that there's some Lama dancing, which could be, you know, relating to the sense of Tai Chi. So the last week of that first summer, Fred Lehrman came to Boulder. I don't know if he said it was to check me out or if I just got that sense that it was to check me out. But after that last week, he wrote a letter to Shi Jung. Professor Cheng was in Taiwan at that time. But in the letter, and I was looking for it, I would love to have found it, which I haven't. But I remember Fred saying that he felt that each person found their own connection with Tai Chi and were doing their own movements, were not just copying mine. And I considered that a great compliment. That's what I was very, very happy doing. So this is the advertisement for the second year of Naropa. There's me doing a class, but that middle photograph gives you a sense of how many people there were at Naropa and how crowded the evening lectures were anyway. It was really an amazing time, and Fred Lehrman and I taught the second summer together. And then by the third summer, there were still so many people who wanted to do Tai Chi. We knew we needed more support. And that was the summer that Maggie came and Ed came and Peter Nirenberg came. And I think this photograph was at the end of the summer. We were really tired. There's Peter and Peter's dog. Batan and Jane came that summer also, and other people from some of the other Tai Chi schools around the country. Naropa had asked me to move there and run the program, but to my surprise, what came out of my mouth was, no, I can't, you're too far away from the ocean. I am really connected to the ocean and I didn't want to move to Boulder, but Jane and Batan were very, very happy to move to Boulder and take over the program. In 1979, I was asked to teach Tai Chi at the California Institute for Integral Studies, which is a graduate school in San Francisco. And this meant that students who were studying Tai Chi are going for their PhDs, masters, but mostly PhDs in the program. And the Tai Chi class I had them reading some of the classics. They definitely had to do commentaries on the Tao Te Ching, and also talk and demonstrate how Tai Chi fit into their life. So there were some very, very interesting classes. I taught there for 25 years, and Tai Chi was always, always a popular class. I also ended up being head of the East-West Psychology program, and I taught sensory awareness and Reichian therapy and other classes. But Tai Chi was always the one that kept on going every year. And then I started going back to Japan in 1977 for the summers. And I taught Tai Chi because so many people asked in Kyoto, and also at a monastery in Okayama. The head abbot, the master of the monastery in Okayama, which allows both men and women and Caucasians and Asians to study together. The only place in Japan that I know of anyway, where that's happening. Harada Shodo Roshi was a monk back when I was a monk, you might say, in the 60s. And he had been doing Tai Chi for, Zazen for years and years and years. And to touch him in sensing hands, or even to give him a correction, it was an amazing experience. I could feel his root that went into what felt like the center of the earth. Now there are many, many different forms of Tai Chi being taught in Japan. Most of them are coming from China. But Harada Roshi says that this form, Chen Manqing's form, is still his favorite, and he thinks it's the best, and he still continues practicing it himself. And I saw that he made copies of Professor's photographs from the book, and he made a chart just like the one that Maggie had in her studio. In his room, there is that chart of the Tai Chi forms. And so for many years, I've taught Tai Chi at Esalen and Hollyhock, different centers around the world. I was asked to work with Tibetan nuns in exile in India. And in working with them, I found that just not teaching them Tai Chi, they didn't have the interest or the time to do that. But like the first movement, the preparation, the beginning movement, just that, and the qualities of standing and centering and everything, and various Qigongs. And I'm told they still do that practice for themselves. So I just want to state a couple of things and then open it up if there are any questions or comments. I must say I've had a lot of damages to myself in my life. In addition to that knee injury when I was 14, I've broken my back 2 times. Once when I was 22 and once when I was 72. And I'm told I should have hip surgery. I don't think I'll be doing that. But the thing is that I'm still moving, and I give credit to Tai Chi for me standing. There are some times that I can't stand and I can't walk. And when I'm lying, I still do Tai Chi. I still do my practice every day mentally. And when I'm done, I feel that I've done Tai Chi. I can feel some of the differences. One of the funny things is when I was younger, after doing Tai Chi, I would usually do the knee massage and the kidney massage. Now that I'm older, I do the knee massage before doing Tai Chi, not just after, sometimes both, but it helps me in preparation. And another thing that's very interesting, so I'm 82 and my memory isn't so good. I spend a lot of time looking for things I can't find or trying to remember things. Often they come to me while I'm doing Tai Chi. My mind is quiet, and what I've been trying to remember or what I've been trying to find happens. Last week, I think some people asked about doing Tai Chi while pregnant, or how is it? I did Tai Chi every day through both pregnancies. I taught Tai Chi during pregnancies. In fact, there's a photograph in one of Eslen's catalogs where I'm holding my infant son in one arm and I'm teaching Tai Chi with the other arm in a class at Eslen. And I must say that when in labor, both times when I would get up to pee, which is quite often when you're very pregnant, I would do the first section and the pain that I had would go away. So I find Tai Chi very, very important. I figure that I'm alive, still alive because of Tai Chi, and appreciate it very, very much. I have one more interesting thing. Maybe it was the last time Professor came to New York, and there were so many people who wanted to take classes with him. There were categories. So the senior students could take the class with Professor, and then the lesser senior students were able to watch but not take the class. And I was on that level. So I was sitting alongside the edge. This was on Bowery, on the Bowery. I'm sitting and I have my young daughter, and the person next to me asked if she could hold my daughter. And I said, sure, fine. I remember Professor was actually doing snake, but anyway, he was doing Tai Chi and I was watching him, and I don't know what happened, but my daughter did something to this woman who was not used to holding babies, and she gave a squeal and her hands went out and my daughter was falling to the ground, and I stuck my hand out and caught the head of my daughter just before she hit the floor. And I remember thinking, wow, this stuff really works. And there is one last photograph that I wanted to share with you. I was on a mission in Tibet. Oh, that one, that's my deck on Cortez Island. When I got property there, the first thing I did was build a deck. Well, I built a deck and an outhouse, and I figured that's all I need. And I will, pitch a tent or something and live there and teach Tai Chi. Well, eventually I had to build a studio because I needed some more warmth and dryness, but that's a studio. It's a photo of being in the woods and with the view from my Tai Chi deck, to which you are all invited to come. But I think there's one last photograph. In 2019, I was asked to be on a women's mission in Tibet. And this is an Amdo, way out in the boonies. This was Gargon Monastery, and it's 14,700 feet in altitude, 2.78 miles. It was freezing, it was very cold, even though it was September. And I couldn't walk 3 steps up a stair without being out of breath. But of course, I did Tai Chi every morning and every evening. And I had no problem doing Tai Chi. I just had problem walking or breathing or talking. And I was out on the deck, and these 2 people, the man is the driver of the car, and the woman was my translator. And I wasn't teaching them Tai Chi. They just liked to follow me when they saw me doing it. And they said that it made them feel good. And I just thought you might enjoy that, the scenery, those old monasteries. And boy, thank you very much for asking me. It has definitely been a journey through my life.
Well, thank you so much for that presentation. It's been a wonderful journey walking through it with you, and I can't imagine it's been such a boring life that anybody would have any questions about it. But we'll try. Anybody out there who has a question or a comment for Judyth?
There are a couple of questions in the chat. Tom Crapper asked you for one more favorite memory of Professor and one more favorite memory of Ben.
Oh, maybe since we're doing the Ben, well, a favorite memory of Professor was when I was pregnant with my second child, and I had gone to New York to be, checked on by Professor, and he told me, he gave me medicine. It was a difficult pregnancy, and he told me that after the baby was born, that what I needed to do is get a chicken. I'm a vegetarian. I've been a vegetarian since I was 14. Get a chicken and bottles of brandy and cover the chicken with brandy and cook it and eat that over and over and over. I managed to do that 3 times, only 3 times, 3 chickens. But he also said, come and bring the baby to me when he's about 2 weeks old. And I pretty much forgot. But Tam called me one day and said, hey, your baby's 2 weeks old. Are you coming to New York? Which I did. I came to New York with my baby. This was Bowery Street, on the Bowery. And I heard Professor speak the only 3 words of, well, 1 word of English that I've ever heard him speak. And he looked at my son and he said, Taiji baby, Taiji baby. So that's my, a wonderful memory of Professor. And of Ben Lowe, I remember we didn't talk, and maybe some people will talk about how Ben had this contraption in his studio, the wall and a great big tire and another wood thing over it. So when he threw people, they would bounce off the tire of the wall. It cushioned our shock a little bit more. And there was one day, I don't know what I did, but Ben pushed me and I went against the wall so hard that my face, I felt like an astronaut. You know how their face used to get flat when we would see pictures of them flying up. I could really feel that I was flattened against the wall, and Ben was so scared. And I don't think we did that ever again.
Great. Well, thank you. Carol Schmidt has the hand icon. Carol?
Yes, thank you, Judith. My heart is so full right now. I was one of the students like you at Shijung in the early days in the Bowery, 87 Bowery, who was a lower beginning student and could watch the classes. So I was taking the classes from Tam and Lou and Ed and Maggie, but I could watch Professor's classes. So I was right there. And our lives have been similar in many ways, but I was one of your students at a place you didn't mention, I guess, when I was living at Green Gulch. And I would drive from Green Gulch to take classes with you, wherever that was in Marin there. And I remember one thing that you said was that you had healed yourself from a whiplash with Tai Chi. And I always remember that for some reason, because I've been in little fender benders here and there. And I've always remembered that you said that. And I'm an older Rican as well. And I'm just so moved and grateful for your sharing. And I offer you a deep bow.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
There's a message from Margaret. If wondering if you have any memories of Patrick Watson.
Patrick, yeah. I'll tell you something interesting. But Patrick was with a woman named Judy at that time. And actually, I think that I mentioned when we were talking about massages, how I was taught to do the eye massage in the wrong direction. That was Judy who taught me. And I think I was able to correct her. But there was Patrick and Judy came by and stayed with us, whether it was in New York or California. I don't remember. This is not a Tai Chi memory, but this is the one that just popped up. At the next morning, Patrick said, I left a penny by the bed. And I said, why did you do that? He said, it's a Chinese custom. Just in case a child was conceived in the place where we sleep, we put money there to make sure that it's our child and nobody else can claim it. Never heard of that as a Chinese custom, but I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah. Katie Cheng. You need to unmute. Oh, there you go. Yep. Still muted. There you go.
Judyth did a very good job, and I really enjoyed your talking. And I have a little suggestion for the knee, because I have knee problem my right knee it's been hurt more than 6 times because most times for the wreck on the car or it's always hurt on the right knee, but you're hurt on the left knee, right? It's a very simple exercise you can do. It's a doctor suggested for that. It's you stretch your leg, you can see, stretch your leg, and for 20 seconds, then you bend the knee, close the body, 20 seconds. Then do that every time, maybe 3 times a day you can do it. Try to do that, and that will release the pain, and your tendons will be better. And the doctor is a surgery doctor. But usually he will suggest people do the surgery. Right now, he said, we don't need to do the surgery. When you do that, you grow the new cartilage, cartilage inside. Yeah. Try to do that, you'll be better.
Great. Thank you, Katie. What I find, the thing when my knees, and they're both knees now, start hurting, for me, the most important thing is to make sure I have my sacrum dropped enough. It changes the weight off the knee, and then it's much, much better. But thank you for that.
Without do Tai Chi, my knee won't be work. And
hey, without doing Tai Chi, I wouldn't be alive, and I'm sure of that.
Thank you for your share.
Thank you.
Is there another question in chat, Redmond?
What was your daily Tai Chi routine and how did it change over time?
What was
your daily Tai Chi routine and how did it change over time?
Well, I can tell you another funny thing. I read somewhere that Yang Shenpu said you have to do Tai Chi 5 times to really get the benefit. So I said, okay, I'll do Tai Chi 5 times. And it took me a while to realize that I was doing it too fast, as you can imagine. I think I was doing 3 times in the morning and twice at night, which is what I still do, but I was doing it too fast. And I didn't realize that Yang Chenpu was probably talking about the long form. And to do that 5 times was really going to mess up my life. I didn't have the time or the space for that. So I now do Tai Chi, do the form 3 times in the morning and twice at night, and hopefully don't do it too fast. But having been a single mother, raising 2 children, I probably hold the world's record for the fastest Tai Chi form in the world. In fact, there was one, the first year at Naropa, Jack Kornfield wanted me to come to his meditation classes and talk about my time in the Zen monastery, a different kind of meditation. And he came to pick me up at 6:30 one morning, and my 2 children were sitting at having their breakfast and fighting, and I'm doing my Tai Chi form. And I remember I was doing heel kick and yelling at my children, and Jack Kornfield walked in. And so I finished doing the form and we went off. And when he introduced me to his class, he said, "This morning I have seen meditation in action," which was a title of one of Trungpa's books, but single mother Tai Chi action. So.
Yeah. You said a lot about the importance of Tai Chi, not just the form, but Tai Chi as a way of living in how you taught it. Could you say a little bit more about that?
Yeah, thank you. That is so important to me. It's so important that we can't, that it not be just an exercise that we do and drop and go. So in teaching, I hope I bring that across and encourage people to feel the Tai Chi way of being, you might say. I can give you one example. When I taught up at Hollyhock, up on Cortez Island, where I now have my own studio. So I don't teach there anymore because I was frustrated by just the 5 days workshops. I'd rather have longer workshops and more extension. But anyway, it was a 10-minute walk from Hollyhock through the woods to my deck. And the first time I would lead the students, and there was talking, and it was so beautiful and everything. The second morning I went and got them, and I suggested that we do it in silence, which we did. And that was very, very different walk through the forest. And by the third and fourth times, I had people walking with their eyes closed, not alone, in pairs, so that one person would have their, would be there to protect the person who was really given the sense to the opportunity to sense walking without using all of the capacities that we think are so helpful to us. And what happened with the people is they seemed to be a little bit more filled out, maybe more energy in them, because the energy wasn't just going out their eyes. They were able to feel their feet on the ground better, more fully. And pretty soon they were even doing it by themselves. And we had a long, long road from my deck back to Hollyhock, where they would do repulse monkeys and cloud hanses. And everybody on the island knows that when there are people walking on that dirt road in strange ways, they're probably my Tai Chi students, and they don't hit them.
Great. TN's iPad. Have your hand up.
Anna.
Can I ask, there's another question in the chat. What did Professor prescribe for your knees?
To do, well, for my knees. Well, he told me to do Tai Chi. Bone, he didn't prescribe anything for my knees. Specifically, the medicine was for me, probably for all sorts of things, but for my knees, it was interesting. I think he was focusing on my back, my broken back more for doing Tai Chi. He never really said anything specifically about my knees. I never really thought of that.
Tana, did you want to speak?
You have to unmute, Tana.
Okay, we can, it's another,
Hi, Judyth.
Hi, Tana.
Hi, Judyth.
Hi.
Tana, there's a lot of feedback. Oh, there we go. Okay.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Yeah, sorry.
You're on.
Feedback. Yeah, Judyth. I'm so glad you're sharing all this information. It's so great. I love you for it. It's wonderful. And one thing I remembered, I don't know if you recall, but it was a long time ago in a camp of Ben's in La Honda. And one time I had been, I think it was after I pushed hands a lot, and I just, obviously I wasn't relaxed, and my my back was really tight. There was a muscle that was really twisted or something. I couldn't turn my neck. And I remember laying down on my cot, and you came in. How did you know? I was like, somebody told you or something. And you said, okay, you need to do this. First thing in the morning, before you get up, put some saliva in your hand and rub it on your back. Mm. And this apparently was from professor's knowledge, and also from watching animals, which is how they heal themselves. And I did that, and totally miraculous. I recovered. And so to this day, I still use that method to to if I have a sore knee, which I do have I have an old knee injury, and I use that on my knee and such. So I just thought I would share that with you and everyone that there are other ways to do things besides, and it entertains the idea of massage, self-massage as well.
Great, great. Thank you for that. I still use my saliva, and Professor said the best saliva is first thing in the morning
Right,
before
right,
you swallow, when you
Yeah.
first wake up.
right.
And I remember, I think Patrick told me that Professor told him, if you don't have some place that hurts, which is not very often for me, and you don't have any place to use the saliva, use it on your eyes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Now that,
What you say, when you say about La Honda, you bring up another memory for me. It was either the first year at La Honda or the second or the third, I don't know, but my kids were still small, and people, the students would like to pick them up, and my children could make themselves heavy so that they couldn't, they're little kids, so that they were difficult to be picked up. And everybody wanted to know from the children, how do you do that? What's that? And I remember my son saying, oh, I just hold on to my legs or don't. And that was the difference in the change in their weight and grounding.
and that's one thing that Ben loved about little kids, that they had this innate ability to just sink down and from babies on up.
Yeah.
And then they lose it somewhere. So we have to relearn it.
Yeah, well, they go to their head, but it's that I don't wanna is really heavy. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Well, thank you,
Thank you.
Tana.
Thank you.
Brenda?
Judith, this was so great. And there are many, many comments in the chat about when are you going to write your autobiography?
Oh, I'm not a writer.
Your daughter can help and other people can help. I think we need to do it.
This was difficult. Well, it was difficult, and it finally got to be wonderful, going back and thinking about my past and everything.
Very, very colorful, very full life. Redmond, is there anybody else in chat?
Yeah.
There are quite a few more questions, but maybe we can have, what do you think, a couple more from the chat?
Yeah, let's do a couple. and
One
then-
more from the chat. Yeah. Sorry, one moment. Someone asked if you, with your background, did you by chance know a visiting Japanese dance professor at Columbia University in the early 70s? She was very small and owned 3 Doberman Pinscher dogs in her studio apartment. When they stood up, she, being very short, would look at them eye to eye.
No, I didn't. My daughter was born in 1970. I was busy in California. No, I didn't know her. Yeah. Natasha has her hand up.
Yeah, Natasha.
Oh, you have to mute.
You need to unmute, Natasha.
Yeah.
Okay.
Keeps on asking me in 3 different places. It was absolutely wonderful, Judith. So great to hear all your background and everything. Very, very colorful and, provokes a lot of imagination. I just wondered, Ed and I came out to Naropa, but I can't for the life of me remember what year it was. I think it might have been shortly after 1972.
Well,
Something.
Naropa started in 74.
So then
And
it
I was
must,
there 74, 75, 76. And Ed came out in 76, but you were not. So I figured you came out by when Jane and Baton were situated.
it might have been before Jane Baton, actually, because I think Professor sent us out way back to see what this Trungpa Rinpoche was like or something. I don't know.
Something.
But I think it was after we got married, because I think it was after we were in Taiwan. So
When did you
that
get
was 1972. So
Hmm.
that's why I don't quite remember, but
Hmm.
you don't remember us being there.
No,
so-
I don't. I
Hmm.
don't. I remember Ed being there, but you're quiet, so you may have been there. But you know, something that I do remember and didn't say was, you know, the Summer Institute was really amazing. But what I did to continue Tai Chi, I really wanted people to have it be part of their lives. So every month, from summer to summer to summer, I flew to Boulder and gave a weekend workshop of Tai Chi to keep the momentum going and keep people going. And there were also that first summer, a fair amount of students from British Columbia, Canada, and they asked me to come and teach in Vancouver. So my life in between the summers was
Very busy.
very busy, right, as well as doing therapy and all of that every other week I was on an airplane, either to Boulder or up to Vancouver, where we had weekend workshops for some years. So yeah, but I really wanted, especially in Naropa, a place where spiritual seekers were trying to have the practice, because there was a lot of dance there also. Mm-hmm. But to have Tai Chi seemed to be very, very important to me.
Thank you so much. It was just so wonderful to hear all of this.
Thank you. I must say, when I first got the email, I thought, you got it. No, you know, this is so egotistic. I mean, this isn't interesting to anyone. So I really appreciate your comments.
No, it's very interesting to everybody, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go to Katie, and then we'll finish up.
Sorry, I take a little time. I'd like to ask you a question. You're talking about you're teaching there 25 years. Is it in the college or where?
Yeah, in San Francisco, the California Institute of Integral Studies. Yes.
Oh, they even have a degree, earned a degree for Tai Chi?
Well, there isn't you can't have a degree in Tai Chi. It would be in psychology or in East-West studies or in somatic psychology and maybe women's studies. And part of your degree would be the credits you got. So they got credits for studying Tai Chi and doing it. In fact, the dean of the school called me in one day because I gave someone an F. I flunked someone from Tai Chi class. And he said, you know, a brain person not being very connected with movement. He said, how can you flunk someone for doing Tai Chi? That's nothing. And I said, because he can't even do the first section. So that flunk stayed.
Thank you for offering yourself so much for Tai Chi. Really great. And the one thing I like to mention about the Tai Chi, how many times playing Tai Chi a day. Yeah. My father said it's all the time. All the time. Right. You're working on cleaning, mop the floor or clean the table, whatever you do, clean the glasses, you're using Tai Chi way.
Right.
So, I never see my father play Tai Chi at home. And I told my father, when you practice Tai Chi? He said, all the time. He's doing the poetry and standing there, cleaning the pot for my mother, and he's doing Tai Chi.
Right.
All the time. It's not 5 times.
Absolutely. That is the most important thing. Thank you. That's a great way to end. All the time.
Great. So thank you so much, Judyth. A really, really fascinating presentation. Lots of food for thought. I would love to revisit some of these subjects or to hear you comment more about, you know, a lot of the crossovers between Tai Chi and therapy and other experiences that you've had. Just a quick reminder to everybody, in 2 weeks, we will be doing that follow-up on the Ben Lowe tribute. So if you have anything you'd like to say in terms of Ben's influence on your Tai Chi or on your life, that'll be coming in 2 weeks. Next week, the subject matter is to be determined. We'll get that out in the next email and let everybody know what we're going to be talking about then. But thank you all for coming. Again, thank you to you, Judyth, a really fascinating presentation. A lot of food for thought for all of us. Take care, be safe, and look forward to seeing you back here next week.